all of this. Andre Bauer, he is the former lieutenant governor of South Carolina, and he is a Donald Trump supporter. Good to see you, Andre. And CNN political commentator Tara Setmayer. Good to see you as well, Tara. So, Andre, you first. Let's begin with this phone call with the Taiwan president. What do you believe the motivation is behind taking this call when for 40 years the U.S. president hasn't done so?
Well, first, I got a wake-up call for Washington and the media. Donald Trump is not going to follow the protocol that everybody's used to. The American public sent a loud and clear message. They're fed up with it. They want to change. Look, I'm very blessed in South Carolina that we have Taiwanese businesses here that have over $1 billion business in one little rural county. We're blessed. I've been over to Taiwan. I've met with their leaders. Protocol may have been broken. This was nothing more than a congratulatory call. Why wouldn't Donald Trump take that call? It makes no sense. This goes way back to '52 during the Treaty of San Francisco when we should have delineated out then whose territory it was, but to not take a phone call from a world leader.
But in this issue, it's an issue of precedence that hasn't happened, that the U.S. has not recognized Taiwan as a sovereign country, and that Donald Trump making this phone call in diplomatic circles, that's how it's ruffled some feathers.
Well, I got a lot of problems with protocol on Obama's executive orders. I got a lot of problem with protocol on Obama going to Cuba. But we didn't have these discussions. It just kind of, nobody worried about it.
Oh, we had those discussions, believe me. We've had all those discussions, but right now the discussion is about this phone call.
Well, I supported Donald Trump because I wanted to shake up in Washington. I'm tired of doing things the way we've done them in the past, and there is absolutely no reason why any leader from any country, Donald Trump, shouldn't take a congratulatory phone call from. They're not talking policy. They're not talking foreign relations. This is nothing but a congratulatory call that you take. I've been elected to office many times when people that weren't necessarily my friends call me to congratulate me. It is just a olive branch being bestowed that says, hey, we wish you well in your new role, and nothing more than that. And so to bend this into something much more than that, I think is wrong. But again, it shows the polarizing of America and the media, instead of saying, hey, this is refreshing. When Nixon sent Kissinger over to China, he was criticized as well, but we extended the olive branch and we're better off for it.
Okay, so Tara, is it as simple as that it's breaking with protocol, that this is, not winging it, as some critics would call it, but instead this is refreshing, says Andre?
Well, with all due respect to my fellow Republican colleague over there, Mr. Bauer, this is not that simple. I know, we still love each other, but I disagree with you respectfully on this. Listen, I've also been to Taiwan. I worked for Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, who co-chair of the Taiwanese caucus in Congress. He was on the Foreign Relations Committee for 7 years, and the relationship between Taiwan, China, and the United States is a very delicate dance, and it has been for a long time, since 1979. This is not just simply taking a phone call from, the Prime Minister of anywhere else. I mean, this isn't Liechtenstein. This is Taiwan, and that region over there, the geopolitical delicate diplomatic dance that we do in that part of the world is very serious. Not recognizing Taiwan officially as being its own independent state, not even calling it Taiwan, makes a difference. They call it the Republic of China. Beijing is very sensitive to how the United States recognizes Taiwan, because as far as China is concerned, they're still part of their empire. So we know that there are many issues going on in the South China Sea, in the Taiwan Straits. We know that there's disputes over islands there, the Scarborough Shoal, the Senkaku Islands, what's happening with the Philippines. It's not that simple for Donald Trump just to pick up the phone and say, oh, that's great, thank you, President of Taiwan.
So in other words, certain critics are saying he really hasn't been well versed on what is at stake before taking a phone call, or even in other cases it may have been initiating a phone call, but the bottom line is that there could potentially be ramifications that come with not knowing all of the facts.
Well, exactly. Whether he does or doesn't, we have to remember that, yes, it's okay that Donald Trump wants to shake things up. That's why people voted for him. But when it comes to foreign policy, these kinds of simple actions can make a difference. Remember the big brouhaha over President Obama and whether he was going to shake the hand of the new Iranian president at the UN, the brouhaha over Castro and those relationships. We have been very clear how these types of protocols matter on an international stage. It's not as simple as just a phone call from a CEO domestically. And I'm one that thinks that we need to be tougher on China, and I don't have a problem with some of those things. I think our government, even under President Bush, has been a little too passive with China, but you have to have a consistent foreign policy doing that. You can't just do it willy-nilly and then figure it out later. There are international implications.
So while you two do differ on some things, it does seem like you agree that Donald Trump is fairly unpredictable, unscripted, anything goes. But this is how Speaker Paul Ryan recently responded to the ideas.
He was a very unconventional candidate. He's going to be an unconventional president. What I like about it in my, like I said, almost daily conversations is he's just a get things done kind of guy.
Have you told him being president is not being CEO of the United States, that the Congress is going to have a say?
Oh, we've talked about that extensively. We've talked about the Constitution, Article 1 on the Constitution, the separation of powers. He feels very strongly, actually, that under President Obama's watch, he stripped a lot of power away from the Constitution, away from the legislative branch of government, and we want to reset the balance of power so that people and the Constitution are rightfully restored.
All right, so this interview on 60 Minutes tomorrow. So, Andre, is that kind of a microcosm that the GOP in general is behind Donald Trump, as unconventional as he might be, but that there is a real coalescing, and that Paul Ryan's views may represent that?
Well, I don't know that Paul Ryan represents the views of a lot of folks that feel like they haven't been, he represents the views of the folks in Washington, and he's very well versed. But Donald Trump is an international businessman. I can tell you he probably understands much better than I do, or Tara does, the situation with Taiwan. But when they were removed from the UN in the 70s, it's a much different country than it was then. Democracy, I mean, they have a higher human rights than many other countries we deal with, and so it needs to be revisited. But to take a congratulatory call from any leader, if it were Putin, he should take a call from anyone.
Yes, Andre, we are strategic partners with Taiwan. We have strategic military alliances with them. At one point, we were training Air Force pilots at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona in an exchange program with Taiwan. We have economic interest there. But guess what? So does Donald Trump. I mean, his son went to Taiwan to explore the possibility of building a hotel there in one of their northern port cities. So, and then now he had, we have this call, and he's just kind of saying, oh, well, it's just a congratulatory call. We have to be careful that these kinds of conflicts of interest aren't superseding the proper behavior of international diplomatic relations with an area of the world that is really volatile right now. And we know that China has hegemonic desires, and they're partnering with Russia as well against the United States in that part of the world. So this is more than just taking a congratulatory call. It matters how Donald Trump handles this.
We're going to leave it right there. We're going to talk a bit later on about the potential conflicts of interest as it pertains to Donald Trump, the president, versus Donald Trump, the businessman.